For the last chapter, we're going to go over the quote-unquote Breyer variation of the Caro-Kann, which is actually King's Indian attack, but against Caro-Kann. You probably shouldn't be playing... you probably shouldn't be playing the e4 variation of King's Indian attack, but sometimes you will end up doing that just to like vary things up, just to test the waters of what your opponent will play. But then your opponent will end up playing the Caro-Kann. Against this, you will end up having to play the Breyer variation of the Caro-Kann if you want to stick to the King's Indian attack structure. This is a King's Indian attack structure, right? When you play the e4 variation of the King's Indian attack structure, you will need to play knight bd2 very early on. And this is just like how you would face the French variation of the King's Indian defense. No, King's Indian attack, sorry. King's Indian attack, sorry. Against this, your opponent will very likely play e5. That's another that's another problem when you will be facing, and then you go knight gf3, forming that thing. Don't ever play. I've seen a YouTube video of someone playing King's Indian attack like this. Okay? Don't do that. Don't do that. If you're going to play King's Indian attack, you're always fianchettoing your bishop. You always fianchetto your bishop. But anyway, I'm pretty sure it's like bishop d6. No, what? E5, knight gf3. That's against this. I'm pretty sure your opponent will probably do stuff like this. G6 is technically a mistake, but that's another move you'll discover. This is another one you'll find, and then no, that's bishop d7. Bishop d6. What's bishop d6? This? No, this. Oh yeah, that is one of the moves you're likely to face. Yes. Against this, the computer recommends d4, but I wouldn't recommend d4. The only time you ever would play d4 is if your opponent tries to like play the symmetrical variation of the King's Indian attack, in which you would have to either go for the c4 variation of King's Indian attack, going for the queenside attack, even though you're playing a symmetrical game, and in that case you would play it very same-ish style. But against this, like, but unless you're going to actually have to transpose from King's Indian attack to King's Indian defense due to your opponent playing the symmetrical variation, or you end up in a pierce, so you have to like play the anti-pierce maneuver, and then because of that you end up having to transpose into a King's Indian defense. Unless those two cases come up, you would never play d4. You would never play d4, at least not in the opening anyways. At least not in the opening anyway. Sometimes I can see, like, say for example you prepare with c3 and then push d4. That can happen, and then you would form connect 4 like this. I can see that happening in some variations of King's Indian attack, but not in this. And then you would just fianchetto here. Yeah, you just fianchetto here. Knight f6. Yeah, just knight f6. And then you just fianchetto. It's a very tough structure to castles. It's a very tough structure to break through against, but I mean, as long as you're patient with it, you shouldn't have that much trouble. But the most likely scenario after this is they'll likely play g6 to fianchetto. they'll go for the fianchetto just like you would. Knight gf3 is again the move. Knight g3 again is the move. Bishop g7, yeah, they'll go for the, they might go for the fianchetto right away. You'll see a similar structure with the 150 attack. Like if you were to play the Modern and Pierce, you'll see it again in the Modern and Pierce chapters where your opponent plays like this. And I'm pretty sure I already recorded a variation where your opponent plays the 150 defense. That will also, like, again, it's a very similar game plan. It will be a bit of a grindy one, but after a while you should be able to find a way to break through. G3, fianchetto just like your opponent would. E5, no surprise there. Bishop G2, just continue with your fianchetto plans. Knight to E7. That's the likely structure your opponent will go for, and then probably your opponent might develop their bishop here, the knight here, or sometimes no, they don't. Wait, no, that's not the arrows you want to use. They'll sometimes go here, they'll sometimes go here, they'll sometimes develop the knight like this. I've seen knight being developed like this as well a few times. I'm pretty sure that's a mistake. Is that a mistake? Well, first castles, right? Castles, nobody's arguing that. The only move that saves the game, like I know Rook E1 is like really popular, but like you're losing at that point. Like don't play it. Don't play Rook E1 that soon. Against other variations of King's Indian attack where your opponent plays like a French variation or a Sicilian variation, just like in the chapters I showed you earlier, in that case, like Rook E1 is like, okay, that's a playable move. Not in this. The only move that saves the game here, A4. A4 is the only move that saves the game. I know it looks weird, like you're already attacking on the king side and you're pushing this on the queen side. I know it's a little weird, but this is just so that this is more like a backup plan where you might, I know for a fact that one of the future moves you'll be playing is this, which B3, which is yeah, you're going to get this. No, sorry. You're gonna get this bishop ready to go, and you're eyeing that square. You're getting this bishop ready to go, and you're eyeing that square. Okay, like this stuff. Like that's what you're going to do against the Caro-Kann variation of the King's Indian attack. I've also seen it happen where your opponent plays this, and then you go here, and then he goes here, and then you go here, and then he goes here, and then you castle, and then you. Well, it wouldn't be these moves exact, but I've seen like this. I've seen this exact structure appear as a King's Indian attack. Like I've seen this happen in a King's Indian attack before, so you know, like this is another formation that you may have to be ready for, and then you. I mean, if your opponent goes for this, and then you could go for that, and then like what your opponent will play castle. I mean, you'll have a pretty easy time. I'm pretty sure, but castles, A4, D4. Your opponent will likely close the position, and the guy from Hagen Poland says that going knight c4 here is a mistake. It's not a mistake. It's actually the best move. This is because if your opponent actually tries to, let's see, what do they normally do? Yeah, b5, right? b5. His argument is that if your opponent kicks the knight like this, the knight is trapped. But that is not true. What you're going to do is knight c takes e5. And then your opponent will try to kick here. And then you will collect another pawn and sacrifice this knight. Yes, you will sacrifice this knight. You heard that right. You sacrifice the knight. And you will justify the sacrifice by taking another pawn like this. You've sacrificed a knight in exchange for 3 pawns. And your opponent's only move is knight to e5. To which you will respond with knight takes e5, and then your opponent will take. And then you have c4, which your opponent will en passant. But you have this check. And then rook has to block, and then you can just collect this pawn for free. Yeah, remember that one. So yes, knight c4 is the actual best move here. And then your opponent's best move is f6. Against this. Oh, by the way, your opponent might play what is it, bishop g4. If your opponent plays bishop g4, you're pretty much winning here. You kick and then take and take. No. Oh, right. You don't take with a bishop. Right, you don't take with a bishop. You take with a queen. And then he'll play b5. And then followed by this, and then. Yeah, this is the exact thing I was talking about earlier with the bishops, right? And then he'll try to play h5 to block this pawn. You're going to get your bishop to a3 eyeing these 2 knights. Nope. Yeah, there you go. You're eyeing these 2 knights like this. That is a skewer. But you're not actually going to take either of these knights. You're just going to keep that, vision, eyeing there. Because you're going to do the same thing on the other side like this, too. And then we'll try to a5 here. Queen g2, just bring all your pieces to the king side. Just don't think too much. Rook to a6, bishop c1. That's just what the computer says is the best move. But I mean, you should play it. b4, he'll try to close the position, and then that leaves you without post to move the knight here. And then he'll try to c5, king to h1. Yeah, because you have a bishop eyeing there. Yeah, your opponent's queen is going to eye you down here too. So yeah, your opponent's queen will eye you down here too. So yeah, be careful with that one. And then your opponent will play king to h7, 1.13 for you. So that's not gonna work for your opponent. So the best move again is f6. Against this, you have c3 and c5. You don't take that pawn yet, but you attack that pawn. Your pawn will take and you take. And then you just go bishop, no, your opponent will go bishop e6. And then you will follow that up with knight to d6 to, I mean, that's a safe square for your knight, because if queen takes, pawn takes. So that's not gonna work. But your opponent could also play c2. Your opponent could also play c2. If your opponent does this, you activate your queen for free. So that's not gonna work. b6 is the next move that your opponent might play against this. Just guard it with your pawn. And you have this, and then you have this coming next, so you can collect that pawn. Knight b c6, rook c1, like we talked about earlier. Bishop takes b takes c5, sorry. B takes c5, and then you're not going to take this. I mean, maybe you could, but like, I don't trust it. You have knight to b7, gaining a tempo on the queen. And then your opponent, like, this move is pretty much forced for your opponent. And then you can collect another pawn on your way out. Your opponent has no choice but to move their bishop here. And then you get to collect another pawn for free. And you're winning. Have fun.